Hi, Jeff. I wanted to try giving your question a better answer than I was able to after my presentation. I think the assumption that you have is that what Montessori is already doing is enough. And I don't think it is. My experience, especially growing up as a Montessori child, someone who went through the program for 9 years, tells me that it's not enough. And so with my presentation, I was hoping of bringing in these broader perspectives, tying them with my personal experiences with Montessori, and kind of showing some avenues of other things we can do. But the reason that I think it's not enough is pretty simple, in that Dr. Montessori's work is about observing the child, and like that's what she tells us to do. However, she approaches this in a very scientific manner. And within science, what the tendency to do is to isolate your subject to control for variables, right? To better understand it, you take it apart, you pick it apart, understand each component, right? But in doing this, you have removed that thing from its context, right? If you, in biology, if you kill an animal to dissect it, to better understand its mechanisms and use this to speculate on its behavior, or like as an archaeologist might do, that animal, you can learn lots, but that is then removed from its context. And what I see has happened in much of the Montessori world is that we've taken this very scientific approach, is that we take children and we remove them from their context and put them into what is essentially a laboratory setting. Like that's, especially going back and observing the lower campus at Hershey, it feels very sterile. It is composed with intent and careful cultivation, but it's sterile in the same way like modern agriculture is sterile, in that it is completely, the children are completely surrounded by supernature, right? And then as both I was reading through Carla's readers, that's what prompted this thought. And so it seems what we've both been doing is trying to reintroduce context into Montessori and being like, this is how you can do it, and this is the context that we find is missing, isn't important. And yeah. So that's kind of the short of it. Is it's you have to follow the child, but you have to follow the child in the child's context. In a school, how we think of school, especially how we as like white people of like European, of like Western culturation, view school is the children are removed from the rest of the context of the world. A school is a box you put a child in because the parents have to work, right? And you can make it as beautiful and fill it with as many interesting things as you can, but it is still this like atomized space that is separate from the rest of society. In which you place the child. I think this was like one of my major frustrations, is that the rules were so different between school and the rest of the world, and because of that removal of context, I was never able to learn. I had to learn the hard way, basically, how to interact with the rest of the world, how to have my voice heard, and this and that. And it was never explained to me why things were different in Montessori. I knew that things were different, like that was addressed, but there was no deeper explanation as to why. So I really wish that in like ninth grade, when we were doing kind of we had a class called Peace and Education, where we learned about Gandhi, we learned about MLK, and I have qualms with how that was done, but that's more technical than anything. I really wish we read Peace and Education so that we had the context for, like, this is why your life has been shaped the way it's been shaped by the institution of the school. And understanding that we were kind of an artificial product of supernature. We were children that were taken and put on essentially a clean slate, right? Like, it's a sample you take and you place it on a petri dish and you watch it grow. And while we did develop and learn a lot along these lines that Dr. Montessori talks about, it's like the issue of if you have a tree, you grow a sapling in a bucket, right? And then you plant that sapling somewhere. That sapling is going to need a lot more care after it has been planted out in kind of like the real world, versus a seed that developed in situ and grew up. That tree is going to have lower odds of survival if it's not cared for properly after placing it in the real world than a tree that grew up in situ. And so, like, after I left, after I graduated ninth grade and then I went on to high school, I had no more support from the Montessori community. And I have continued to not have support from the Montessori community as a Montessori adult, with the exception of personal relations, right? So again, the issue is, well, that's a personal issue that you need that support, and I have to rely on individual acts of goodwill. So how Lori has been working with me, how David McNeese, one of my former teachers, still is in contact with me, and has very graciously been like a spiritual advisor in some ways, right? But that is something that the institution of Montessori itself, so the school itself, AMI, right, the organizations that propagate Montessori thought and ideas, do not have any interest in doing, like engaging in like this continual lifelong community support. That I think is a hallmark of a true community. And this is why I equate the community I experienced in Montessori to being a false one, because it only existed because my parents had money to pay for it, and within very specific parameters. And once I grew outside those parameters, and once I stopped contributing money to the system, the community disappeared. So I've heard, have just started your own school. Which is wonderful. That's beautiful. We need more Montessori communities. But I think that's something I would ask you to think on and to sit with, is how can you support your students after they've graduated? And I don't think you can anticipate those needs. It's the same thing. So you have to continue following the child, right? You follow that person, follow those people as they leave your immediate physical community, and see how you can grow your community beyond just the classroom. And in doing that, I think they will bring things back. They will contribute, and they will help you expand that classroom itself. Because we don't need schools. Like, I don't like schools. We need communities. We need community education. We need community support. And I think looking at the indigenous voices that Carla and I pushed forward, and the Black voices, and so on and so forth, that when you observe those communities enough, you can start to see the difference between how, like, I don't know your background. I'm making a few assumptions. Like, I know you were an engineer. I think you grew up in the suburbs-ish, white, middle class, something like that, right? Like, because like that's kind of how I grew up, right? And so, like, what assumptions were we given from that culture that make us think of schools the way we do, think of communities the way we do, and then how can we shift that to be more conducive to a healthier society, right? Because within the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg, and there's a lot of like shared ideas between indigenous communities in Turtle Island, North America. But one of the ideas, the seven generations rule, which is every major decision we make, we look how will it affect 7 generations in the future, and how has 7 generations back, how has that history impacted the circumstances that are leading to this decision. And I think Montessori falls short in that we say, well, just follow the child and that's enough. Just make sure that the child right in front of you is okay. And when you dig deeper into her work, what I really think she's saying is it's like that's the start. There's been some aberration within the culture she's observing. So these Western colonized cultures, even when she was in India, right? She was in colonial India under British occupation, right? Within this Raj that was dominant, that had its caste system and this, that, and the other thing, right? So she didn't really step outside that kind of culture when she was doing her observations, but there's been some break within our culture that has led to the development of systems of dominance, systems of violence as the primary means of ordering things, right? And when we follow the child, we see that those are unnecessary and actually get in the way of like full human potential. So we raise children in this more peaceful environment, in this more peaceful way, and then what society are they going to build out after that, right? And my work has been continuing that charge I was given as a child, right? Of how do we build those more peaceful societies, right? Because I learned to follow myself as a child, right? I learned to follow my self-actualization, right? And this is why I use the Blackfoot teachings in my presentation, and why it is so powerful to me, because they're saying basically the exact same thing, right? Like this is how we've organized our society to promote that kind of peace and harmony within our society. So I hope that is a better answer to your question, and why I find what Montessori is doing at present insufficient. And that is why in this way it propagates the status quo, and the status quo is bad, to put it bluntly. Yeah. So anyways, I hope that's helpful. Thank you for listening. This was a little longer than I was anticipating, and yeah, I'll send this to Lori and to you, and I'll share it with the rest of the class so they can hear the thoughts. Anyways, peace.